So they need to be able to read the questions carefully. Are the tests timed? Yes. FSA writing, grades 4 or 5 is 120 minutes. One session, so that's 1 day. So please make sure they're feeling good, they eat breakfast, we want them ready to test. One session, they get a break after 60 minutes of testing. And I do believe 4th and 5th is April 1st. It's not an April Fool's joke, April 1st. FSA ELA reading for grades 3, 4, and 5. Math grades 3, 4, and 5, and then science grade 5 is 160 minutes over 2 days. So they'll have an 80-minute session on day 1 and an 80-minute session on day 2. They will get a short stretch break after 40 minutes of test now. We want to encourage the students to please, I cannot stress that you ask them to take their time when they are testing. Do not worry about who's done, because a lot of times they see one person's done. All they can do is sit there. They can't read, they can't write, they can't draw. All they can do when they're done is sit there. So I encourage them to go back and check their work. The teachers cannot say, check your work. So they have to have that in them to go back and check their work. It is paper-based tests. I know that last year or year before it was computer-based, but everything is strictly paper-based this year. Students will receive a test and answer book. Students will work problems in their test and answer book. For the grades 4 and 5 writing, students receive writing plan sheet, test and answer book. And we are encouraging them to plan. So practice with them at home, give them a prompt opinion, give them something to write about and have them plan. Grade 5 science will receive a test book and answer book and sheet. Practice tests have been developed by the Department of Education. You can go on the DOE site and look at practice tests and practice at home. Students will have an opportunity to take the practice test at school prior to the actual test. And have they started practice?
I think it's after spring break.
Yeah, spring break.
After the writing.
So they will be doing practice tests, but again, you can go on the DOE site to find various practice tests and practice with them at home. All right, students can earn scores ranging from levels 1 to level 5, level 1 being the lowest, level 5 being the highest. They score a level 1, so let's just say they take the FSA this year, they score a level 1 or a level 2 in any other subjects area. The next year, they will have to start with the PMP or progress monitoring plan. Okay, so level 3 is kind of where they're expected to be, and then level 4 is proficient, and level 5 is mastery. Any questions for me before we move on to ELA? Okay, thank you.
I'm Mrs. Lightfoot. I teach 4th grade ELA reading and writing, and this is.
Hi, Mr. McCormick, 5th grade ELA reading and writing.
So we're going to talk about what's expected of your students when they take the ELA components of the FSA. The writing component is first. That's coming up, like Ms. Proctor said, it's April 1st. Students are given what's called a writing prompt. Giselle's done one. Who else has done a writing prompt practice? Yeah. So the kids are familiar with it. We've been working on it all year. Everybody's. Everybody today? Students will read this prompt, and then after that they read a text set, is what it's called, which are several texts written on a common topic. And they also tuck in a graph or some sort of visual aid that they're required to analyze and use in their response as well. The word count for these text sets range anywhere from 800 to 1,300 words. So not only are they reading and analyzing these texts during this time period, then they have to figure out what it all means, synthesize it, and write a multi-paragraph essay, which is step 3. So you write a multi-paragraph essay in response to the prompt and those texts. And that test is April 1st. I think it's a Tuesday this year. Yeah, I think it's on one of the end of the slides, exactly, or it might be on one of the handles. What is it? It is a Wednesday. Okay. Last year was a Tuesday. So they're asked to write into 2 different forms of writing. It's either called informative or opinion. And these are just some examples of what those would sound like. You want to read one of them for us, Mr. McCormick?
Sure, informatives, the passages you'll read were about exploring, the passages you read were about exploring the oceans through technology. Write an informative essay in which you explain how technology has helped Explorers overcome challenges related to deep sea exploration. Use evidence from the passages in your essay. And we spend a lot of time, I know in 5th grade, and I imagine you in 4th grade, unpacking that prompt. A lot you can learn a lot from the prompt, what type of essay you're going to get, and we spend a lot of time determining the topic and the point, what the prompt wants you to write about. We flip it into a question that kind of determines our purpose for reading. Kind of tell my students kind of the reading is kind of like breathing in, the writing and the planning is kind of the exhaling part, putting it back out. So the prompts are very important. So the other example is an opinion prompt, and that would look like this. The passages are about bottled water. Write an essay in which you give your opinion about which system would be better for your school. Selling bottled water or buying a water purification system, and why the other idea would not be a good choice for your school. Support your opinion with evidence from the sources. So that's an example of what an opinion prompt might look like.
And they don't know the day of the test which prompt they're going to get. So we practice throughout the school year being able to identify the type of response they'll write. Because with opinion writing, it's almost getting them ready for argumentative that they start doing in the upper level grades, and taking a side and coming up with reasons and evidence to support. And then with the informative, it's mainly like identifying that main idea and the point about it and coming up with the evidence they found in the text. They are taught throughout the school year, though, how to identify the difference between the two. We do what's called the buck strategy, and B in buck stands for box in the word informative or opinion as the first step when you unpack that prompt. That way they're prepared for the day of the test when they get the writing prompt for the first time. So we don't know what topic they're going to read about. We don't know whether it's informative or opinion. We've just been teaching them how to be prepared for it.
Yeah, we do a great deal of practice in both.
Mm-hmm.
So they should be prepared for whatever they get.
Exactly. The way this test is designed, the way it's scored is it contributes to about 10 raw score points to their overall FSA test score. Like Ms. Proctor was saying earlier, it's so important that they've taken both parts of the test to get a final FSA reading score. The raw score is not the most important score when considering a student's overall performance, though. That was one thing that was pointed out by the FDOE and their levels and such. FSA, like other statewide assessments, it's not scored using how many correct they got out of how many questions they were asked. Each question, depending on the level of difficulty and complexity, as they call it, carries more point value than others. Basic recall, explicit right there in the text type of questions and answers are going to be worth less points than those that require what we call inferencing, what we call the implicit questions, where you're taking the text clues, using what you know, and tying those things together. It requires a little more critical thinking than just the right there answers. So as it says here, students correctly answering more difficult items do receive more credit than students that do correctly answer the less challenging questions. And that will determine that level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and so on. In other words, the scoring model involves both the number and the difficulty of questions a student answers correctly. Any questions about that? Because that sometimes confuses. Okay.
Can they take dictionaries?
It depends if they are what we call an ELL student.
Clara
is.
Okay,
She
yes.
would be able to.
She'll have her accommodations, as we call them, and she, yes, absolutely can have it's a translation dictionary, I believe. And as far as I know, they are allowed to ask for clarification of directions as well, especially if
When does
it's
she do that?
during the test,
During the test.
during the actual test. Yes, students that receive accommodations would be your English language speakers of other languages, students with a 504 plan or an IEP. They receive different testing accommodations, usually in a smaller group setting, extended time, but it's determined on the needs of the student that's been established ahead of time before the test. Any other questions? Yeah.
How can we get these writing prompts?
Oh, just one, the day of the test. Oh, yeah, no. We're working on one this week, and we're just step by step, and we spend the whole week, and I'm training my kids how to do it step by step, so that they can just do it all together at one time in a 2-hour setting. But no, they would only receive the one, yes.
But we practice for
Yeah.
all the two different types.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to?
Sure, on the reading FSA, so it's broken down into different categories, different skills. One skill, key ideas and details, and the questions are based out of both literature and fiction and nonfiction. And then you'll see the percentage of questions that are asked there. So an example in nonfiction would be to read a passage and to determine what's the main idea of this passage. There might be a part B to that question as well with a supporting detail. What detail supports your answer to part B? An example of a fiction question could be, what is the theme of this passage? And also a part B, what is the detail that supports that? Craft and structure is another skill also found in fiction and nonfiction that has the highest percentage of questions on the FSA. A lot of times in fiction that could be the plot structure. In nonfiction, it could be identifying whether it's written in compare and contrast, description, chronological order, and so on. Usually about 5 text structures that we study throughout the year. So they should be prepared with that. Also, integration of knowledge and ideas, as well in literature and informational text. How well can they integrate ideas? Meaning, how well can they take 2 different passages and think about them together? How well, what are both of these passages saying? So kind of putting those together, and we're working on that quite a bit in writing as well, and in reading.
Finding that pattern across the text and how they're alike.
Yep.
With their topics and points.
Yep, and finally language and editing. I think the students are typically correcting sentences, filling in the correct word.
Like grammar type stuff.
Grammar.
Yeah.
A lot of times if you've seen iStation, the fluency part of iStation looks kind of similar to what they see on FSA.
Just to mention, remember when Mr. McCormick said something about the part A, part B questions, what's the theme, and then that's not a get part A right, you can get the point, even if you get part B wrong. It's what we call all or nothing. That would be one of those kind of middle of the road type questions that are worth higher level points. So we're teaching the kids that they need to be able to answer both parts of the question correctly. Do you have anything else you want to mention?
Just with the writing, we were talking about the higher scores going from good to great
Yeah.
involved elaboration,
Yeah.
and how the best papers, they're organized and focused, and they answer the prompt, and they use details from the articles or the passages, but they also contain elaboration, which goes a little further in the students'
Which is like that analyzing the text and making those connections to it with stuff that they know. But that's a good point. And the planning that that's starting to trigger, the planning that Ms. Proctor was talking about at a meeting I attended last week. Someone that's the head of our ELA elementary department said they're finding a pattern, a record, like going in past years looking at student scores. Students who are doing thoughtful, thorough plans, showing that they're really looking at the text and analyzing it and finding those patterns, those are typically your higher level scores. The ones, because the most you can get is a 10, and the lowest would be even a 0. But that takes like just not even responding at all or writing it in a different language to get something like that.
Or copying, right?
Yeah.
Text.
And if the writing is too formulaic
Oh, yes.
now,
Yeah.
it'll be a lesser score.
Almost like they were given sentence stems and they just say, for example, this from the text, according to the text, and just answering it like it was a fill in the blank. Because they're scored in 3 different areas: purpose, focus, organization, evidence and elaboration, and then the editing piece is also part of that final writing score. And then it all ties into how they do on their reading FSA. Okay. So these are the types of reading they'll be expected to, what we call navigate, the informational nonfiction text. One of the handouts that you have, I believe it's the white one, and there's like 2 columns. Those are just many examples of what the state may decide to give them in the form of either informational or fictional writing. I know the traditional literature is one that we really try to focus on. We do it at the beginning of the year as well as the end. That's your fables, your tall tales, myths. Those always have good lessons to learn, and that's a question that's asked. How do the characters change? Poetry is something that we look at as well. Our 4th and 5th grade, they share the same testing date. The first session's May 5th, and the second one is May 6th. So we have some time after we take the writing FSA to practice all their skills that they've learned throughout the year in preparation for the test. So there's an example right here of that Part A, Part B type of question they would get on the FSA, and it happens to be a theme question. So it says, what is the theme of passage 1, and then which sentence from the story supports the answer in Part A. So it's really important that our students and children are building their stamina for reading for the FSA. They're taking 2 tests, or they're taking 1 test over 2 days, and these are 80-minute sessions. It's a long time to sit and read through all those texts. So I shared this with my class the other day and talked about how important it is to read daily in order to build your word knowledge. So this is just a nice way to look at, like, the student that reads at home 20 minutes a day, how many words per year they're going to hear. It's like 1 point, or read, it depends on what age the child is, 1.8 million in just 1 school year. Compared to the student me who only reads about 5 minutes at home, they're only going to hear or read 282,000. And 1 minute a day is 8,000 words. And you'll see the percentages. The kids who are likely to score in the higher percentage range are the kids that are reading 20 minutes or more at home, or as much as they can, if that, daily. And do you guys have any more questions about ELA, or do ELA teachers want to add anything? Oh, Townsend.
I read 30 minutes at home now.
Oh, that's awesome. So if you did the math, that's definitely going to be bigger, much higher than 1.8 million, right? Yeah, that's awesome. Anybody else want to have any other questions about ELA?
The biggest tests, you find out the topics for writing.
No, they're similar. It would be similar, like, topics. Are you talking about the writing prompt
Yes.
topics? We don't know the exact topic about
The
what.
ones that were offered past previous years.
Oh yes, those are online.
They are.
There are online prompts examples on the education website, and we're more than happy to, if you request a teacher, ask your teacher, your child's teacher to send home examples, we can do that as well.
FSAassessments.org.
There's a slide at the end, it's gonna have, yeah, but no, that's fine, but there'll be a slide at the end that will have those.
Okay.
And I was gonna send this, through Dojo, to other teachers if they wanna send it out to the parents, so then you have a copy of the slide, of the PowerPoint. Let's turn it over to Ms. Meister to talk about math and then science.
Okay, I'm Mrs. Meister, and I teach 5th grade math and science. Oh, yeah.
And I'm Mrs. Ludiker, I teach 4th grade math and science.
Okay, so the math is basically broken down into, well, you want to talk about 4th first?
We have 4 concept levels where we're looking at in the math for 4th grade. Operations and algebraic thinking, numbers and operations in base 10, place value is a big thing right there. Again, we have numbers and operations with fractions at 25%, and our most heavily tested area is measurement, the data, and the geometry section. So we're recently right now in fractions, and we have previously done some work with the measurement and geometry. We will be going back and reviewing everything again. We have, about 6 weeks at the end of our, basically our time frame to go back and review before this test. I believe this test is in the 2nd week of May for math.
Right after ELA.
Yeah, ELA will be the 1st week of May, I believe, and then the math will be the 2nd week. So, we will be doing a lot of review before that time gets here.
And 5th grade is basically the same thing, but just on a little deeper level. In fourth grade, they do a lot of, computational type problems on the FSA, where fifth grade is the computational problems, but there are also a lot of word problems. And so we spent the entire year taking, those word problems apart, just like they do with the prompts for ELA. We take and we kind of break apart those word problems about, what is the problem telling you, and then what is the problem asking you to solve. And so we constantly are repeating those questions so that they can solve them. So the operations, there's the multiplication, addition, subtraction, and division of whole numbers, fractions, and decimals on fifth grade FSA. And so, and then the measurement and data, geometry, that's kind of what we're into now. And then, like Mrs. Luker said, we will be also going back and reviewing these, especially we'll be using our data to take a look at those benchmarks where the kids did not score as well on. And so those are the ones that we're going to be hitting on first, and then we will, kind of remind them of the ones that they did better on. And so that'll be coming up after we get done with the core instruction. Yeah, multiple choice, these are the test types. Okay, the multiple choice, and that's usually where there's just, there's some questions that they only have one correct answer. And then the multi-select is where they could possibly have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 correct answers. And so, the days of only having A, B, C, D answer choices are over. They've got, sometimes they might have 5 to 6 answer choices that they've got to check every single one of them just to make sure that they're getting all the ones that are correct. And again, we go over, how do you know if there's more than one? How do you know if they're, and so we go over the things to look for in the questions. Is there an S at the end of, select, or does it say select all that apply? Choose, yeah, so it's,
And with the multi-select, especially in the math, they might give an answer, and they have to go and find all those different ways, whether it's addition, multiplication, division, different ways that that answer could be the correct choice.
yeah.
So some children tend to not like to try to work out all those, and we're going back and we're like, no, you have to check each one of these, because you're gonna do all this work, and if you forget one just because you didn't show your work or you didn't try, you just basically gave up that question.
Yeah.
So it's challenging.
Yeah, it is challenging.
If I may, a lot of times, let's say there's 3 out of 5 are correct, 2 of them are more obvious than the third correct.
Yes.
And you'll miss the one correct one because it's trickier to get to or
Yes.
or challenging to get to.
It requires that logical thinking is what we call it. You gotta think logically with math, and so some of the times that's very true. They will overlook the less obvious answer choice. All right, table match. Usually they'll be given a data table, and then they've got to answer questions based on that data table. Response grid, which is what is down here underneath. And this year, the kids have been told, since we found out, that their answers have to be left justified. Before, in years past, the kids could have their last digit on the right and then work to the left. Or they could have their first digit in the left and then work to the right and fill in the answers of their digits to the right. But this year, they're saying they have to be left justified. So their first digit in their answer has to start in that left-hand box. And so, that's something new this year. So we've been really driving home the point every time we have a gridded response that has to be left justified. And the kids are catching on to it. We usually remind them, and I think, almost ad nauseum, but, and then the editing task choice is another type of multiple choice where, I think that's one where they might find the error in the problem. And so they're given the problem and they're saying, well, Julie gave her answer is this, why is she incorrect? And so they would have to go and figure out why Julie's answer was incorrect. Any questions so far?
One thing I would like to go back to, you mentioned like word problems and things of that sort. I know 5th grade does the same thing. What do I know? When you're working with your children at home with these word problems, they get to be challenging, especially especially the multi-step word problems. Okay, what do I know? Let's underline what we know. Okay, next, what are we looking for? Make sure I'm answering. If it asks me to find it in inches and up here is in feet and yards and inches, make sure I've answered that problem in inches. They answer it correctly in yards or feet, it's going to be wrong. And then the most important one, is my answer reasonable? Okay? So when we're looking at some of these problems, I'll be like, okay, you have 100 here, you told me you're taking away 25, but you just told me your answer is 125. You're taking away 25 from 100, is that reasonable to have 125? So just talk with them with that piece in mind when they're working through their homework problems.
And the computational problems, we're also encouraging the kids to estimate before they get their answer. You know, a lot of kids want to solve the problem and then they'll do their estimate on their answer, and it doesn't work out that way because I tell them, well, what happens if your answer is wrong? Your estimate isn't going to tell you that your answer is wrong because you estimated on your answer. So they have to estimate first and then compare their answer with their estimate. And so there are lots of problems that lend themselves to that estimation. Okay, so this is an example of a multi-select. So again, it says select all the expressions, and I kind of emphasize expressions with that S at the end that have the same value as 30 divided by 10. And so they would have to select all the ones that they feel have the same value. We even talk about what the word value means, because sometimes it's the vocabulary that will trip up a child in being able to understand what they're doing. And so vocabulary is huge in not only ELA, but in math and even in science. So it's, well, you know, anytime they don't know a word, I've encouraged the kids, either ask me or ask somebody sitting next to you so that you can, have a better understanding of what that word means.
The children will be provided a reference sheet in the FSA packet. We're not allowed to make a copy of this and hand it to them. It will all be under secure test items. With that, we have used it some in my class, but we're going to go back and revisit it. And what I like to do is I like to teach them to chunk up the sections. You know, if we're measuring the length, we're going to group all that together. And then the quarts and ounces and gallons. Everything that's related, I try to make it so it kind of sticks out to them, so they're not looking through the whole list to find pounds down at the bottom when they've gone through that whole list. So we're going to be pulling out new ones of those for my kiddos that have already been working with them. We're going to pull out new ones of those, and we're going to work more with those, just even making it so it's friendly for you guys to work with.
And this year, or right now, we're working with the reference sheet. So all the kids have a reference sheet. And what I've even done is taken it down to, and broken it down even further. Like they know that 1 yard equals 3 feet, but we've even broken it down in inches. So it equals 36 inches. Because sometimes in 5th grade, they're asked to break it down over 2 different measurements and units. And so we've taken now the mile we haven't done anything with, but like ounces, the pint is 2 cups, equals also 16 ounces. So we've added that equal sign to the ends of those so that they can hopefully memorize those as we continue to use those reference sheets. And so,
About
yes.
what you're just saying, reminding me of something that occurred in my class. They will cleverly or just quietly change the unit when they ask the question. When they talk about, let's say, feet in the question, and they'll ask the question about inches without ever making it obvious they made a change. But I mean, it's obvious if you read it carefully. But I notice sometimes kids will do the calculations and find the correct answer if it was feet, but since it's inches, it's going to be multiplied.
Right.
Well, and so that's a mistake that often.
Yeah.
And one other thing, with the gallon, with the ounces and cups and pints and gallons, we have the kids make a big graphic organizer with a big G. I don't know if some of you may have seen that. You know, and in the G they put their four Q's, which is the quarts. And you know, when I looked at it this way growing up, I could never remember that. But as soon as I saw that graphic organizer, I'm like, oh my goodness, why wasn't I shown this years ago? It makes sense completely. It's a great visual. So hopefully they've shared it with you guys too, the gallon graphic organizers.
And we did a little work today on metrics. And so we went back and made a connection with what they were learning about the multiplying and dividing of base tens, the tens, the hundreds, and the thousands. And so a lot of, we kind of went back and looked at just moving the decimal point. You don't even have to multiply, you don't even have to divide. All you need to know is which direction you're moving the decimal point when you're multiplying and dividing. So we went back and touched on that, something that we covered earlier in the year. And so it's kind of making those connections like ELA was talking about.
I have a quick question. What is that bottom formulas, 8 equals?
Oh, area?
Oh, it's just
Area equals
that.
one times
even know what that means.
Fifth grade kiddos, raise your hands. Okay, I'm noticing something different between the fourth grade reference sheet and the fifth grade reference sheet. In fourth grade, you were given the area formula and the perimeter formula. We learned it as area equals base times height. Okay. I'm teaching my kids that, and then I'm also teaching them the area equals length times the width.
Yeah.
But fifth graders, what's missing on this one?
It's not there.
Area and perimeter.
It's not there, so I would make sure I really know that.
Right, and we also tell them that the LW means that if they're right next to each other, it means multiply. So if there's no multiplication sign, or there's no the little asterisk is also used as a multiplication sign. So all these little things that, that the little things that we tend to don't want to overlook, so that they are prepared. All right, now science is just fifth grade, all right? And so it's based on, now the nice thing about science, it's still using the next generation Sunshine State standards. Okay, there's no FSA for science, which is nice. It is based on what the old Florida Comprehension Assessment Test, which was called the FCAT. And the questions are asked in multiple choice format. So there's no multiple select in science. There's one correct answer in the science questions. And that's what I keep trying to, drive home with them. Because I have some of my fifth graders that want to give me 2 answers for a science question. No, only one answer for science. Okay? Now that's a good resource for CPALMs, is a place where you can go to get different kinds of lessons, activities in science, and actually all subjects. And the testing format is paper, and we're going to be taking it the week before the last week of school. Gotta love it. And so you can kind of tell where their minds are going to be on. Is it science? Probably not. But, you gotta do what you gotta do. Now, for general information, contains questions from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade curriculum. So they not only have to remember what they were taught in 5th grade, they also have to go back and remember what they were taught in 4th grade and what they were taught in 3rd grade. So as 5th grade teachers, we're not only teaching 5th grade core curriculum, we also have to go back and review what they taught in what they learned in 4th grade and they learned in 3rd grade. Knowledge of vocabulary is a must, okay? Not only with math, but with science as well. The science department has made available 60 power words that will appear on the SSA. Reviewing those regularly will help with understanding the questions. And I must say that Mrs. Proctor has been giving SSA, the 60 power word, giving them little quizzes in the cafeteria, And I want to say probably, I had my homeroom stand up, and there were probably 2/3 of the kids stood up because they got a 90% or higher on vocabulary. We take weekly, if it's a full week, usually if it's a 4-day week, we don't do the vocabulary, but I give them 5 vocabulary words every week. And so they have to learn the definitions. And I read the definition to them, they have to write down what the word is. And then I pull 2 that we've already done as review, and those are extra credit. So if they get them right, those are extra credit points, and if not, then, no big deal. So we've been going over these 60 power words, and I think we're down to we have 4 more left after this week. That will be, and then we'll be done with them, but we review them every week, or just about every week, we play vocabulary basketball. And so I read the definition and the kids tell me what the word is, and if they get it right, they get to come up and shoot a basket in the basketball and the hoop. So, you know, we try to do different things that are gonna help them remember what the words are. The practice website on Clever, there is EverFi, and so that is, EverFi you can also access that for math. But it's got a science section on there that is based strictly on Florida Sunshine State standards. And so there's lots of different activities. It's all based around hockey. So if any of your kids are into hockey, then they could go on to EverFi and select the science tab on EverFi. Okay, here's the dates for all of the testing. So,
And that's on the cream colored
oh,
handout.
okay, here's the one that Mrs. Lightfoot was talking about with the FSAassessments.org for the practice tests. All right, other things that you can look on for Clever, the PLP, which is the personalized learning pathway, and that's just for reading and math. All
With
right.
that personalized learning pathway, that is like a prescriptive program.
Yeah.
If you get your child on that program and they're maybe struggling with reading, they're not gonna give them a higher reading passage. They're gonna give them just what they need, and the same with the math. If they're like lacking some foundational skills, it's gonna take them back to those foundational skills, help them master that, and then move it along through the curriculum.
Absolutely. The PLP, I like it because it also offers the videos
Right.
for if they're struggling with a concept, they can go right to a isolated Khan Academy video that's short, in 3 to 4 minutes, and just hits that particular concept, and they can watch it again and again until they understand it.
Yeah.
I've seen the
Yeah.
And it's even great for parents. I mean, I've
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
done it a couple times for my kids. So.
Khan Academy is a free
Yes,
website.
it's free.
If you're not aware of it, it's KHAN Academy. And you can log on, and it takes all the way up through college math, you know, so it's a great website for your kids to become familiar
A
with.
couple years ago, I had a 4th grader that was in my class, and he was really advanced in math. And he was actually doing high school math. It advanced him that far because he was that strong. So it will challenge your child. When they're strong in math, it's gonna push them, and it's gonna make them go to that next level. And that's how we will get those 4s and those 5s on the FSA, which will help them in middle school.
And one thing that a lot of parents may not be aware of is for middle school, when your child goes to middle school, it's their 4th grade FSA scores that determine whether they get into advanced classes in middle school or whether they get into remedial classes in middle school. And so if they're a level 1 or a level 2 in math or reading, then they miss out on those elective courses and they have to take remedial classes in middle school. But it's their 4th grade skills, FSA scores that determine that. They don't get the 5th grade scores back early enough in the summer for them to be able to set up schedules for, 1,100 middle schoolers or even 300 or 400 6th graders coming in based on their 5th grade FSA scores. So it's just a little food for thought for those of you who have 4th graders, for moving on into middle school in 2 years.
And with the PLP, I'm sure you've heard about the kids saying, oh, we have MAPS testing today. We have it for ELA and we have it for math. The way it's all connected within our system, it's taking the data that your child performed on the MAPS ELA or the MAPS math, and it's correlating these PLP lessons right to where their performance level is.
Yeah, and they can do them at home.
Yep.
So it's something that's, available to them to do at home, as well as are all of these. The iReady, the Dreambox, iStation, and of course the EverFi. Okay, just some suggestions for supporting your child at home in order to have stress-free testing days. Have your child go to bed at a reasonable time, okay? A full night of sleep, 8 to 9 hours, is suggested for this age group. Avoid screen time 2 hours before bed, so no tablets, no phones, no computers. at least 2 hours before bedtime, all right? Staying off devices before falling asleep helps the brain relax so kids can have a restful night of sleep. Practice being at school on time with breakfast, offered free in the cafeteria daily. And then read, read, read. Like Mrs. Slightfoot and Mr. McCormick were talking about the stamina of the reading. It's so important for the FSA reading test. And it's also for math as well, because they get some pretty lengthy math problems and pretty lengthy science problems that they have to make sure that they're reading all the way to the end of those problems, those questions. And so students will be testing for 2 80-minute sessions. Encourage, motivate, and praise your child.
Can I take it back to being at school on time? We have to start the FSA at a certain time to be able to make this time frame fit within our schedule. Say we're starting at 8 a.m. and some children come in late. They come in at 8:15, 8:20. Well, we've already started the test. They cannot interrupt our classroom to allow that child to come in. So that child would not be able to test in their normal environment. So that, would cause me some anxiety as a child personally, I can tell you that. Just not being in my routine kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. Do your best to get them here on time, get those bellies full, good night's sleep. Stay off the games for a little while the night before.
Yeah.
But if they're not feeling well, right?
Yes.
Ms. Proctor, if they're almost, they're not feeling well, but you're like, push through it. I know you can do this, you've got the test tomorrow. Would you be in your best testing mode if you were not feeling well and could do your best work when you're already worried about it? No, it's better to keep them at home and do a makeup session than to take the test sick.
Right.
My daughter did that, and that wasn't the best situation for her. She pushed through it, but she didn't do her best that she could have. So I lived that situation, so yeah, it's better to make it up for sure.
Hey, we'd like to thank you for coming tonight. We definitely appreciate your time and thank you for attending. Does anybody have any questions for any one of us?
We do have the opportunity to, if you don't have a Connect to Success computer, there's a few, I don't know how many are left, Ms. Ackland? A few. It's a first come, first served basis. Ms. Ackland has the paperwork and can explain what else you need to attach to it to get a free computer if you have internet at home, so you can be using those valuable resources that Clever offers. So your child can be preparing for FSA at home. Grades for the FSA? The summer.
Yeah, they
Usually the end of June.
Yeah.
Third grade comes out sooner because it's a social retention year.
Yeah. If Clara logs on the portal, I'd say probably midway through the summer, probably maybe July. If she goes under test history, her score should be in there.
Otherwise, you have to report from school or wait for the next school year. Well, if you're in fifth grade,
Yeah,
that's
they're
a
fifth
little
grade,
harder.
yeah. They usually travel with them to middle school, but whether or not they get past that, we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have a question, sweetheart?
What time is middle school uniform day?
That's tomorrow. So you can wear whatever you want tomorrow.
7:35.
Oh yeah, same time, same channel.
A different outfit,
You can be out of uniform.
different dress